Hi, it's me again. Now, if you thought working at the BBC was like being on a gravy train, you wait to see when they make you redundant. It's like having a lottery win. BBC hands £100,000 golden goodbyes to record number of redundancy staff. A record number of people being made redundant by the BBC are getting 100 grand a time. Now, the BBC do need to make massive cuts. We all say that. They're making the cuts in the wrong place, obviously, but I mean, you can't win them all. At least they're making cuts, I suppose. I still don't think they deserve the amount of money they're getting. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is the BBC handed out a record number of golden goodbyes worth more than £100,000 in severance to redundant staff last year. The corporation's annual accounts show 219 employees received six-figure sums when they left in 23 to 24 at a cost of more than £28 million. £28 million. 28, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, divided by 50. 165,191 households paying the TV licence fee to pay the redundancy cost for 1 year of the BBC. 165,000 households. That's a lot. That's a lot of households just to pay the redundancy costs for 1 year at the BBC. Now, I do understand, obviously, you've had employees there, depending on their salary and how long they've served, you've got to pay redundancy. I get that. I get all of that, and there's probably not too much they could have done about it, although I'm sure they've negotiated higher than they should have. Probably this isn't statutory redundancy pay like me and you would get if our company let us go, but still, that's a lot of money. Analysis of the corporation's accounts show that the total value of payouts worth more than £100,000 has almost trebled in the last decade, up from 10.7 million in 12 to 13 to 28.3 million. Yeah, but probably quite a lot of that is inflation. I mean, how much was a quid worth in 2013 versus today? Yeah, it's more. So a quid in 2012 be £1.40 today. So there is, some of that is inflation and salaries are higher now. But it's still a shocking amount of money, isn't it? I wouldn't mind. God, I love my job. I love my job very much indeed. If you're watching this, please don't make me redundant. But if you did and you offered me 100 grand, I'd probably take it. Joanna Marchong, the investigations campaign manager at the Taxpayers Alliance, told The Telegraph that the BBC should reduce the amount it handed out. BBC licence payers will be far from impressed with these redundancy payments, she said. Not just BBC licence fee payers. People who don't pay the licence fee, like myself, are also far from impressed with these redundancy payments. The only people that would actually be impressed with these redundancy payments are the people that received these redundancy payments. A series of overly generous golden goodbyes are costing a fortune and becoming the norm. I mean, they say, how much were they saving for local radio? I've lost the numbers. But that 28 million quid, if they could have got that down, maybe some people who like BBC local radio for whatever reason and are angry about the changes wouldn't be so angry because they could have protected local radio. I wonder how many of these jobs actually were local radio jobs that are now redundant. Probably quite a lot of them, I'd imagine. And there's a few female newsreaders in here as well, and they were getting well above six figures in redundancy. We've done that story on the channel before, haven't we? Tim Scott, the executive of the Freedom Association campaign group, said hard-pressed BBC licence payers will again be wondering what their fee is being spent on. Well, it's not being spent. We know it's not being spent on programming. I mean, the video I've just filmed before this was the BBC spending millions on a workplace culture review with a consultancy firm. And now we've got these redundancy fees. Then you've got, look at the FOI requests for the booze bill and the taxi bills and the travel bills. And there was one, where was it? I was on Twitter the other day. Hang on, where is it? I've started using Twitter more. Don't know why. Yeah, here we go. Edward Lawrence. And he was a reporter, senior journalist, camera operator, and editor covering China and the Asian Pacific for the BBC. So they paid for him to live out that way. I believe it was China. I could be wrong. So they pay for his travel costs. Probably gets a few flights a year. It'll be business class because it's a long haul flight, and that's how that works. Gets an apartment, gets a full expense account, gets to live in China, and they paid that whole bill. Why? And it's not just him. I'm not singling this guy out. They've just made him redundant. It says here, look, the BBC have made me redundant in the last round of cuts. I'll now be leaving my position and China by the end of December, blah, blah, blah. He probably got 6 figures as well. Good luck to him. I don't care. It's not my money. But why are they paying for him? Not just him, not singling him out. I don't know him. And God knows how many other people like him in God knows how many other countries around the world. That's a huge waste of money. Why are they doing that? If they didn't do that, maybe they wouldn't have to have local radio redundancies or news redundancies that are based in this country, would they? Now, I don't know if he was actually employed by the BBC, pay your licence fee to, or by BBC Studios. Don't know. He just says the BBC. But it boggles the mind that they spend all this money to pay for people to be in other countries to report the news. Why can't you just do what Sky News regularly does and come up with a deal with another news broadcaster locally in that country to share coverage? And if something happens in the UK, you share your coverage with them abroad. How much cheaper is that? Or if something really dramatic does happen, you could send someone out there directly for a week or two to cover it and then bring them back, rather than pay for someone to be permanently based in a country just on the off chance something's going to happen. Wasteful. In the past decade, the BBC has spent a total of more than £365 million on staff severance pay. Of those, 163 million was spent on 1,270. It's just big numbers, isn't it? Worth 6 figures or more. Farewell payments totaled 55.2 million. God. The BBC has publicly declared redundancy payments since 2013, when it was publicly rebuked by the National Audit Office for making payments that exceeded contractual entitlements, provided poor value for money, and put public trust at risk. There you go. I told you, didn't I? That there's no way that they're statutory. People have negotiated that. And the National Audit Office said payments exceeded contractual entitlements. There you go. It's tough working at the BBC, isn't it? You ride the gravy train when you're there, and when it finally pulls into the station, you're not going to be queuing at your local food bank, are you? It had awarded George Entwistle, the former Director General, £450,000 after he resigned after only 54 days in the job. I'll leave that there. Shall I? Still pay your licence fee, do you? You're still happy paying them £169.50 of your hard-earned money that you go to work for and probably toil for, that could be going on something more useful, like paying your heating bill, going towards a well-earned holiday for yourself, clothing your child, I don't know. Or you could give it to the BBC and let them spunk it up the fucking wall. What do you think about this? You know my thoughts on it. I mean, you knew my thoughts on it before I even started going through it, obviously. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching. While you're down there, leaving your comment, hit all the buttons and everything as well. Subscribe, all of that, if you haven't already. Because if you do that, hopefully I'll get to see you in another video again soon, won't I? Ta-da.